addition to the lives lost and the hundreds of people injured, the damage to Colorado's roads and bridges, to our housing and to our agriculture is daunting. We're about to embark on a rebuilding effort that is truly epic in scale. As we do, I want to convey to Coloradans everywhere the extent of the damage, and I want to make clear that the key to rebuilding the state better than it was before is Coloradans everywhere working together. And here's what we're looking at, and I'll preface this by saying that we're still assessing that these figures could rise, but this is what we know. According to CDOT, we've got about 200 miles of state highway that has been destroyed, otherwise compromised. We probably have several times more of that if you include the local roads. If you look at this map here, it shows the various canyons. Each of these blue triangles is a bridge up these canyons, and then back out in the beginning parts on the plains. As we build this map further out, again, you will see even more state highway mileage that has been lost when you get out in the eastern plains. Some estimates in Weld County suggest that many, many tens of miles have been lost out there. Many of these roads are critical in their communities, and they have been, those communities have been cut off. Weld County also tells us that more than 120 bridges were impacted out there. Within just the Front Range area here, we had, and you can see three different types of designation on this map of the dams. Yellow dots are the low hazard dams, the orange dots are the dams that breached, would significantly damage property, and the red dots are dams that, should they fail, would likely result in significant loss of life. The important thing to recognize is that through the Department of Natural Resources and their inspections, none of those major dams, none of the red dams or the orange dams were breached or considered in danger. And even the small dams the few breaches we had were insignificant. Today I was in Julesburg and Sterling trying to assess, as we have on several other occasions, the agricultural losses. As in Weld County, Morgan County, and other of the eastern plains, critical roads needed to bring in crops that are about to go to harvest are completely broken apart. And this has to be every bit as critical priority as the roads connecting people with their communities and homes in the canyons. Irrigation in large measures has been washed away along the Platte. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has an emergency program that provides assistance for water infrastructure. There's usually a 25% match that local communities in the state are going to have to help figure out how we match that. As far as homes and shelters, we have well over 17,000 structures have been damaged, over 4,000 of them swept away or lost entirely. Current estimation is over, well, almost 2,000 homes have been lost. To address all these, we need a comprehensive approach. To address a substantial road repair, we have created a CDOT rapid response team, the Infrastructure Recovery Force, and I think it's clear we're in a race against the onset of winter. The Infrastructure Recovery Force is going to clear away and repair and reconstruct as many damaged stretches of state highway, deploying resources as nimbly and strategically as we can by December 1st. The Federal Highway Administration has made $35 million available in emergency quick release relief funds, and CDOT has allocated $100 million to begin these initial repairs. In terms of the dams, the Department of Natural Resources is deploying inspectors and expects to have all 200 dams inspected by the end of this month. We have every confidence that the funds that FEMA and other federal agencies have set aside for disasters exactly like this will continue to help fund our recovery. And while the money to fund our repairs is obviously critical, it is not everything. In fact, it is nothing without us operating as one statewide community. Are we going to rebuild a road or a bridge exactly where it was? Or are we going to rebuild it somewhere else entirely? Will the local community want to rebuild it somewhere else? This cannot and should not be legislatively decided or dictated from Denver. Each local community has to come together and make these decisions in rapid order. We have been in frequent contact with community leaders from the areas affected, county commissioners, state representatives, along with other officials. We've set up a process where we're going to keep them in constant communication. We'll have a weekly meetings via conference call with officials in all 17 of the affected counties. And as of today, overseeing all of this will be our new Chief Recovery Officer, Jerry Stead. Jerry is the Executive Chairman of Englewood-based IHS, For many years, he was their CEO and created a remarkable landmark landscape of growth and success. His company is a global information company with world-class expertise in energy, economics, risk sustainability, and supply chain management. Exactly the types of skills that we need for this recovery. In other words, then, that Jerry was really sent from heaven to do this task. And in fact, Jerry, if you ask him, that's how he sees this. He believed he didn't have a choice but to set aside everything and donate his own time and that of his staff to help Colorado in this time of need. And my fellow Coloradans, we have little doubt that you feel the same way, and indeed, we're counting on it. Many of the homes destroyed had no flood insurance. Many of them didn't even know they were in the floodplain. At best, FEMA reimburses these people who have lost everything no more than $30,000. Rebuilding the homes alone is a tremendous task where volunteers like Habitat for Humanity are going to be needed, and we're going to begin a major effort in that direction. We also have to help people who are trying to clear out and clean up their houses. All volunteers can call, in the local area, can call 211, and in the weeks to come, we're going to set up structured formats by which we figure out how we're going to rebuild these homes. I hope a year from now, we're going to be able to say that we built 1,000 new homes with volunteers and community support. I hope a year from now, we'll be able to say that Colorado is a national model of how we bounce back from this kind of disaster. Some very good news is coming together, and rebuilding began even before the storms had stopped. And at this point, I've flown over the storm-ravaged areas several times, and flying over our beloved and battered state, we know that no matter where we have been, the first thing you really feel is two things, and they both hit you at the same time. You feel how spread out we are, how much distance there is between us, and you feel the devastation. The bridges and roads crumbled and gone, the houses, trailers, cars, bikes, children's swing sets have been twisted, scattered, completely washed away, as if they meant nothing to anyone. Thousands of lives have been upended and emotionally scarred. Everything you would see would lead you to believe that everything has been broken and cut off, shredded apart and scattered. But then you start to see something else. You see the truth of what is really happening is the opposite of what you first thought you saw. You see people moving towards one another. You see people climbing over and walking through, getting across. You see people finding ways to one another, to check on one another, to help one another, to support and carry one another. Neighbors who have known each other for years or neighbors who have just met, each time coming together. Our National Guard and first responders have been swooping down from the heavens and risking their own lives to lift others to safety. But really, everywhere you look, you see these heroics. You see the kindness, you see the love, you see the community. You see, the truth is, these are our bridges, right? I found myself wondering, like probably almost everyone has, how did this happen? Why is this happening? And I guess we all have to come up with our own answers, but I've had a couple of takeaways, and let me finish with this. First, there really isn't anything between us but what we choose to put there. And second, we are connected to the very best of ourselves, to the very best of what we can and should be when we are connected to one another. And that's what I've seen when I've flown over the flood-ravaged parts of this state. That's why I'm absolutely confident that Coloradans are going to be able to rebuild this state better than it was before. And that's what I mean when I say that I've seen plenty of broken roads and bridges and homes, but I haven't seen a single broken spirit. Thank you. We have Don Hunt from CDOT. We have our Chief of Staff, Roxanne White. We have actually Jerry Stead is on his way from the airport here, coming as fast as he can. His plane was a little bit late, but Kerry Nelson from IHS is here. Are there any questions? Yeah. Well, what I tried to outline there is, the major components of what obviously we need to rebuild transportation infrastructure. We've had tremendous loss of housing that's got to be addressed, both in the short term and the long term. We have significant issues around the harvesting of crops, the recovery of homes and transportation out on the Eastern Plains. That's going to require a superhuman effort to orchestrate and get it all done in real time. If we're going to try and connect all the mountain communities, make sure we get the vital infrastructure out on the plains rebuilt before December 1st, it takes somebody full-time coming in and orchestrating all of those different components so that they don't get tangled up in bureaucracy and red tape, so that the implementation can go smoothly. And having one person with the capability of Jerry Stead, and you all don't know Jerry Stead, but he is one of the most talented executives we have in Colorado, and his willingness to come in and donate his time for the number of months that this is going to take is a true gift to the state. Yeah. Yeah, he'll have a staff, a support staff, and then he will have liaisons in each agency. So, in essence, he'll be the mind that helps connect what everyone's doing with each other and make sure that we're doing everything as efficiently and effectively as possible. Now, it doesn't mean he's going to come in and go into the Department of Transportation and tell Don Hunt, no, you've got to do this. What he's going to make sure is that Don Hunt is aware of all the specific issues around transportation that are also affecting housing, community connections, harvesting of crops, those kinds of other issues. Yeah. Well, I think we've seen, to my knowledge, 4 spills, nothing excessively large. You have to put, I mean, we've had a large amount of pollutants coming into the Platte River just by the flood, right? So they've gone through stockyards. I mean, there's a number of our wastewater management facilities got overwhelmed, and waste got flooded into the Platte. Again, not a lot. When you look at the amount of water going through that river, it will process these pollutants very, very rapidly. Not that any pollution is a good thing, but in a flood of this magnitude, to have as little as we've had, and I think oil and gas is no different. The several small spills that we had have been very small relative to the huge flow of water through here. We're not looking at it, unless there are other facts that I am not aware of. I wouldn't think that we would merit a moratorium. Yeah.
Governor, do you tend to ask Congress to approve an emergency relief package similar to what we saw for Superstorm Sandy in addition to the FEMA aid?
We'll see where we come out, but yes, that's certainly a distinct possibility. We don't have enough information yet. You know, it's interesting. Our first responders, our National Guard, have done a job beyond what you could imagine. We've got several people from Vermont that were intimately involved in the leadership roles in rebuilding and the recovery around Hurricane Irene. And they are very candid, saying, we look at where we were, 4 days after the rain stopped. You guys are at least a week ahead of us, and probably more. And a lot of that is we've had these other disasters, and we have the experience to recognize we've got still a lot of work to do, and making sure that we are doing our assessment of what our losses are, because that's what really drives those kinds of relief packages from Congress. Yeah. I think everything from, and not just the big things like bridges, but even culverts, right, that take storm water under a road or under a driveway. We need to look at every one that's been washed away and assess, was it in the right place? Was it the right size? Was it a 2-foot culvert? Should have been a 3-foot culvert? Should it have been a different kind of culvert? And that's the challenge. At the same time, we've got to go full speed. Again, we've got to get these roads built. We've got to reconnect people to their communities and their homes. We've got to make sure that our crops get harvested. But as we go fast, we've got to be smart about it and rebuild better than we were. It's a little bit like the, if you look at Peyton Manning when he does the hurry, and pushes the offense down the field, he's still being very, very careful, right? He's really working hard to make sure they avoid turnovers, they don't make mistakes. I think we have a sense of urgency, but we're also going to be very careful. Yeah. You know, this is one of the things about the United States of America, right? People get to make their own decisions. And we have urged a number of people. We think they are still in danger, but we're not going to force them to evacuate, right? All we can do is give them the best information we can of what the risks are. Then they make their decision, right? We won't allow people to put other people at risk, but people make their own decisions. Couple more. Well, you know, two things. Historically, there's a local match, generally around 25% that FEMA won't cover. Historically, Colorado has always relied on its municipalities and its counties. The state hasn't used money for that kind of recovery expense. This is such a significant disaster that we might look at trying to have the state partner with some of the local communities, but that's got to be discussed. We'll certainly reach out to the legislature as we get a better picture of what's going on here. It's worth pointing out that we've had a lot of push and pull the last couple of years, but we have lobbied hard and successfully to increase the state's reserve every year. So that reserve is really, we were planning it to be used for the next recession or for an unforeseen disaster. So again, I'm from a much more conservative school. I don't know what we're going to see next year, right? To go say that we're going to use, even a third of our reserve on this one disaster, let's see what the needs are and make sure that we're doing something that's fair. I look back at what the disasters last year, and there had to be a local match there, and in almost all cases, that was taken up by the local communities, the municipalities or the counties. So we need to be fair to everybody. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, we have, what is it, Don? How many assessment teams did you have out there? 8?
We've had 20 total assessments.
So if you include, 20 assessment teams out looking at what is the damage and trying to really monitor how grave the damage is on each part of the road, which allows you then to begin an estimate of, A, what it's going to cost, but B, how fast we can do it. And I don't know if you want to take a stab at some of those communities or whether you want to punt.
No, I'll take it.
I mean, I set him up that way. I think the key here is to recognize that whatever figures that Don or the Department of Transportation puts forward, you have to take them with a grain of salt because they're going as fast as they can. I mean, many of these places, we are just getting people to look at for the first time in the last couple of days.
It's really pretty simple. Based on the information we have, which is largely from the air in the corridors that have been hardest hit, especially Highway 34 in Big Thompson and US 36. Our goal remains to reestablish those routes before the onset of winter. That is our goal. But to be honest with you, as we get into those corridors and figure out what's there, we may achieve that or not. It's going to depend on the weather. But we're very clear. We're in the response period, and we want to reestablish all of the U.S. and state highways into the mountains before December 1st.
And I think it's worth pointing out that FEMA specifically was asked, I mean, can we still be funded to do temporary roads, right? And temporary bridges to make sure we get people back to connected with their homes and their community as fast as humanly possible. And they said absolutely. Go ahead. See, and that's why someone like Jerry Stead is so valuable, right? So if your company is a world expert in supply chain management, right? Many of those same types of decisions in terms of prioritizing what is the most important. But the bottom line is, it's all important, right? We will have, I don't know, Don, do you have, I mean, how many different contracts that you put out?
3 contractors, the National Guard, plus our own forces. So we really probably have 5 different teams for temporary route establishment.
Right, so right off the bat, and they're starting work,
The Guard is in the US 36 corridor.
right, so already at work. Yeah.
Governor Shumlin in Vermont says that one of the keys to their speedy recovery, which has become a national model, is the fact that they almost immediately waived permitting and bidding processes. They were approving contracts over the phone through verbal agreements, and they were bringing in environmental folks from natural resources to take a look around on the site and verbally agree to proceed without long processes. Are you prepared to do that here?
Within reason. So, in other words, we're not exactly the same as Vermont, and some of our issues are different. But to a large extent, we're going to accelerate every process there is, and certainly in terms of procurement and how bids are done, we're going to move much more rapidly than we normally would. Don, do you have any sense of time on bidding processes?
We plan with the 3 large contractors. Their proposals are due at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, and we'll be selecting those 3 contractors. When we're doing emergency work, it is not a bid process. We will establish a pay list, a quantity list, pay items, and they'll be paid for the work they put in place in the field. And when you're doing emergency work, that is a standard practice. That's response. As we move to then the permanent reestablishment of bridges and roads where they should finally be, that will be more of a bid process at CDOT. All of the roads that you see in the red, we have plans to reestablish routes by December 1st. It's a goal, and it's what they call now a reach goal when you are trying to motivate a company or a government. So it's a reach goal, and we will have enough different contractors, National Guard units, and CDOT units to have a chance at reaching all of those corridors.
And just for the record, and he's probably never going to speak to me again for making him say that, commit himself to those reach goals out there, but Don in his previous life used to run a large engineering firm, BRW, and a lot of what they did was this kind of stuff. I mean, oftentimes they were building big facilities, massive construction projects, but also they had a lot of experience with project management and how to get stuff done in real time. One last question? Yeah. Yes, I think, to my knowledge, and Larry's been on the job for how many days? 3. Larry Wold's been on the head of public health and the environment for 3 days, but we have the capacity to make sure we measure for all critical components of pollution. So, and that has already begun, ongoing. We'll get that done in real time. Thank you.